There are a lot of questions about whether or not this actually will go forward, what the denuclearization definition means to Kim Jong Un, which could be different than what that word means for President Trump and the Trump administration. Lots of questions, especially in terms of the stunning, unbelievable turnaround by Kim Jong Un. You know, just recently, of course, he was accusing the United States of wanting to attack his nation, saying he would turn Seoul, Korea into a sea of fire, more bluster and arrogance from him. But suddenly we saw those images of him smiling and walking casually with President Moon. Just a stunning turnabout in the developments there. Let's bring in for more on this John Park. He's director of the Career Working Group at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government in Cambridge. John, welcome. I mean, do you think that Kim is generally really sincere, or is this just another North Korean head fake?
Well, Eric, that is a key question, but I think given the level of preparation and also high-level interactions, we're looking at preparations for these summits taking place through intelligence channels at the highest levels. We haven't seen that in the U.S.-North Korea context, and I think from that, there is something to be said about then-Director CIA Pompeo meeting directly with Kim Jong Un. So I think with those type of interactions, we get to learn more. And, you know, frankly, there's a lot happening behind closed doors. So these preparations are not definitely the norm, as we've seen in the past.
You know, there's some concern that, you know, both sides may be misreading each other. Mike Morrell, former CIA Deputy Director, was on CBS this morning. Let's show you what he said.
Both sides, both the United States and North Korea, are coming to the table for different reasons, and both sides are misreading the other side. We think that we've brought North Korea to the table by putting our arms around their neck and squeezing with sanctions. North Korea is coming to the table because they think they're now a nuclear weapons state, and they're dragging us to the table because we are afraid of them in that status.
I mean, John, do you concur with that? And is there a real danger in two sides misreading each other? Do you think that's what's going on or not?
I think in any level of discussions along these lines, there is that danger of misinterpretation. And so the question is, what do you do about that type of risk? One thing to mitigate that risk, what we've seen is the tremendous use of interlocutors and, frankly, the offer from the South Korean side of providing their services. Here I'm particularly referencing their intelligence service. The National Intelligence Service of South Korea is playing this intermediary role, and I think from that perspective, working closely with their American counterparts as well as with the North Korean counterparts has enabled them to close some of these differences, but not completely. And so this is a part of meeting and actually negotiations, which will be key, but we're seeing a lot below the surface that normally doesn't come to light.
Well, clearly, perhaps formalizing an end of the Korean Wars of just the armistice that was declared in 1953 could be an easier sell and something that can be easy, you know, much more easily achieved. But what about, you know, North Korea's weapons of mass destruction, its artillery on the border that could pound Seoul, and even his nuclear program? He's seen what has happened in the past to Gaddafi. He knows that, and that has been his protection. What chances do you really give Kim Jong Un of giving up his nuclear protection?
It is a monumental task, but I think that's where these type of deals and the idea of what the North Koreans can get, that's a big basis of this high-level type of interaction that's happening at the summit level.
And what do you think they should that make them do that?
Well, that's a part of the negotiations in terms of concretely putting something on the table. But with respect to the North Korean claims and the statements that have been made in direct reference to the United States, I think through those type of discussions, there's been a big focus on trying to get two conditions met. That is their security needs as well as removal of threats. But embedded in that, there's been a lot of discussion about economic development projects. And clearly, we've seen reference to that in the past. But that's the part that could be new. If you fast-track the economic development, the infrastructure projects, there could be this idea of building some of those sites near these WMD sites in North Korea. And the idea that as you expand upon them, you're essentially moving into these former WMD locations. So there are opportunities here, but the whole concept of moving from nuclear weapons, nuclear swords to plowshares, that is conceptually something to explore further.
Yeah, we're looking at the site Yongbang that apparently is operational now. I mean, you think he really is ready to move into the modern world? We've seen those photos of a dark North Korea and a bustling, light, bright South Korea. You think after all this, starving 1 million of his people, having concentration camps and the like, he is ready to move into civilization?
Well, there is a piece of the Panmunjom Declaration that focuses very much about the future. The idea of moving to a permanent peace mechanism, There are also big references to these infrastructure projects. But one thing we have to keep in mind is that North Korea and the elites have tasted this globalized lifestyle, and that's predominantly from the 1% of the North Korean elites migrating and operating, living inside of the Chinese marketplace. So from that perspective, what they know of that experience and scaling up is very tangible. So I think that part makes internal convincing of some of the different groups within the North Korean elites much more straightforward. But it is this grand bargain. Who does what, when, where, and how? Those are the details that we're going to see in the next phases of these different meetings.
And finally, one thing that we as Americans should never forget, and that is Otto Warmbier. His parents now are suing the North Korean regime, claiming that they basically murdered him in cold blood, that the 22-year-old University of Virginia student was brutally tortured and killed, left basically brain dead. Should President Trump demand that Kim apologize, and more than that, prosecute the guards who are ever responsible?
Very tragic what happened to Otto, and I think when it comes to dealing with these type of issues, there will be a time and place for it. But in terms of the prioritization of what's happening for this initial meeting between a sitting U.S. president and the North Korean leader, the focus on how to move forward on this denuclearization game plan, I think, will be the priority, in the hopes that there will be opportunities later on to address these issues.
Well, let's certainly hope that they do. John Park from the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University in Cambridge. John, thank you.
Thank you.